Well, let's watch the French Revolution, guys. I have nothing to do,
Some dirty
but I will play tonight, 100%.
I've never worked a day in my life. Wow, that Marie Antoinette.
This guy needs to make more videos, man. He's so good. I would love to see what he does about the Vietnam War, man.
Since France is in financial ruin. Quite. Thank you one and all for attending the royal marriage of my grandson, the future King of France, to the Archduchess of Austria. Now for the yet historically accurate part of the ceremony, where we
Yellow was literally just a DLC for Red and Blue. True. Somewhere here. Other than you have Pikachu behind you.
Alright, now that's out of the way. Let's leave the royal couple to it. You better give us an heir, you fat, ill-bred boy. Nighty-night.
I think so. That game just was so ridiculous, man.
France is in financial ruin.
Skywind? It's like a mod remake of Morrowind into Skyrim.
That sounds good, man. That sounds good. But I'm like a guy, I wanna... You have to close chapters. Morrowind was good when I was a kid. That's it. I will not go back to like in a modded Skyrim. Leave it at what it is, you know? Never played Baldur's Gate.
As it had been for centuries, an exquisite social culture, with the king and the upper classes throwing crazy parties every night, enjoying high living and fine dining. Who cares that they were only able to do so off the backs of the hard-working, starving poor? What are they gonna do? Revolt? They're only 80% of the population. No.
This is kind of us today, but we are the 99% of the population.
What's that, France? You want to go to war with Britain and increase your power? Go for it, little buddy.
We have watched Star Wars 2 million times, guys.
You lost. Now you're in severe financial
This is the
debt.
Vampire
We have
Covenant.
no money. What do we do? Should we stop partying? Heck no. Party harder. That's okay. The peasantry will pick up
That's
the
French,
slack.
man.
They were created by God to do all the work, and you were created to reap all the benefits and party hard. That's just how society works, and we've all just accepted it for centuries.
Ah, the clergy
Why?
was rank 1,
Why
actually.
what?
Yeah, makes sense.
Why do the nobility get to be all rich and stuff? Just because they were born into it? And the rest of us schmucks just have to accept that? Hell, why do we even need a king? Who decided that? It all just seems very unfair and unequal, and I, for one, am starting to question it. Wow.
I love how Goethe already had a picture like this of himself, man. He must have been a nice little memer, man.
Very enlightened of you. And so began the Age of Enlightenment. Great philosophical
Very important,
thinkers
man, for
across
the human
France
race.
and beyond began to question whether this beautiful nation was really all that beautiful.
Who's your favorite
After
streamer?
all,
Don't know, the
hey,
Lyric is my
Prince
favorite
Louis,
streamer.
bad
I think
news.
he's the
Your
greatest.
grandpop died of smallpox this morning, which means good news, you're now the king. So just to sum up, France is in severe financial debt, and the angry populace are beginning to question how necessary you are. But hey, I believe in you, champ. You got this. Maybe.
He is so fucking dead.
Oh no! Prince Louis Capet became King Louis XVI in May 1774. He was a notoriously weak man, and he knew it. He barely had the wisdom to rule a nation, never mind one in crisis, and he was easily manipulated by those around him. One of his first acts was to try to get revenge on the British by financing their American colony's revolution. Hey, we're an independent nation now. That was real swell of you, Louis. Couldn't have done it without you. Glad I could help. So hey, about all that money we lent you, when can we get that back? Yep, you're a great guy. I'll
Wow!
never forget what
Fucking
you've done for
America!
us.
You didn't pay the
Real
bet, they
glad I
saved
could
your
help,
ass!
But about that money, gotta go now,
Jeez!
chum. Best of luck
Ah,
to you.
fucking Americans, bro!
No.
And they gave you the
Now
freedom
France
statue?
was in even more
Liberty?
debt. France is
Bullshit.
poor, suffering under the strain of economic ruin, watched as the nobility continued to live as though nothing was wrong. In particular, they grew increasingly disdainful of the Queen, Marie Antoinette, as she continued to spend all of France's money on her own luxurious lifestyle and fashion. While the peasants were breaking their
Fucking
backs in the
monarchy, huh?
fields, she was walking around like, hey, my hair is a boat. I'm not making that up. Her hair really was a boat, and her lavish spending earned her the nickname Madame Deficit. And speaking of the Queen,
my
there
hair
was
is
also
a
a
boat.
long-standing scandal around the fact that the king took a very long time to boink her, and the working classes of Paris began ridiculing the royal couple with lewd pamphlets depicting the Queen as a court thought, and the king as a wuss, unable to fulfill his marital duty. Respect for the monarchy was at an all-time low, as France's finances were spiraling out of control, and the king and his aides really
Like, all the women today who are thoughts would have been great queens to monarchs back in the
only
day.
had one
Right? That
solution
makes
to the
sense.
crisis.
If you think about it.
Tax
I'm not
the
even
poor.
fucking... Yeah.
Tax the poor. We could do a sexy calendar shoot. I mean, tax the poor. And so it was.
Oh,
The
God.
poor, who were already struggling to make ends meet, found themselves being taxed from every direction. Hey,
God.
I'm the royal tax collector. Looks like you've yet to pay your income tax, head
Yes, more
tax.
guys, I heard.
By the way, how many windows you got in that house of yours? 3? Oof, yep. There's gonna be a tax for that. Hey, your local priest here. Have you paid your church tithe yet? Well, at least this one is going to the good work of God. Shh. Sure. God, I think this year
Sure,
God wants
man.
me to buy a new swimming pool. Hey, private tax
Well,
collector
some things
here.
never change,
and
huh?
I brought some goons with me. Just a few quick questions. How much salt did you buy this year? About 7 kilos, I think? Yep. Okay, there's gonna be a tax for that. Oh. What's that?
And then
over
they
there?
wonder why they will
That's
get
extra
fucking
salt I
beheaded,
held
man.
over from last year, so I wouldn't have to buy as much this year. Oh, yeah, there's a tax for that. And what are you doing with all this salt? Well, obviously cooking. Mm-hmm. On the table. Yep. And preserving fish and meat. Oh no. Yep. And there's
There's
a tax for that. Hey, how old is he? He's 9. And so he's purchased his required amount of salt for this year, right? What? No, he's 9. Uh-oh. Sorry, little Timmy. Looks like I'm gonna have to tax you for that.
I mean, obviously they're gonna fuck them up for that.
Yep. Salty. There's going to be a tax for that, and that's not all.
I mean,
A huge
how
portion
fucking
of the
dumb you have to
peasants'
be as a
harvest
monarch
had to be given
to
up.
fuck
And there was
people like
also
that.
the labor tax, where peasants were required to work a certain number of days for their local lord without pay. Obviously, people weren't too happy with these taxation
You have to
policies,
pay for the
and
lord
aggressive
without
nature of
paying.
these private tax farmers sometimes even escalated to violence. In particular, though, the people really hated how inconsistent the taxation rules were across the nation, and also the fact that the first 2 estates often had to pay very little, if any tax at all. And so, the anger continued to grow. France had a population
Streaming? There's a
that
tax
was
for
just
that. Well,
about
that's what
ready
Germany is
to
doing
explode.
nowadays, sure.
What could push them over the edge? How about a touch of natural disaster? A series of harsh summers and winters left the peasants' harvests in ruin, meaning they had no food or money, and the cost of bread skyrocketed. Of course, the upper classes had massive stocks of grain and wheat, so they were virtually untouched by this new crisis. But now the poor really were starving, and they
This is like the 1% nowadays, but this time this time the monarchs, they have like the media on the back and shit. So this is like the story of life, right? We are the peasants and they are the big ones. But this time the big ones, they have the media and all that shit, Hollywood, to keep us at base, so we don't even think of rebelling.
Where sometimes
Right, man? Yeah,
wow,
Kalyagi
this is
plan.
really
It's George
getting out of
Soros,
control.
man. George
Your
Soros.
Majesty, we need some decisive action. You need to step up and lead us. What will you do? Okay. I've got
Except we're
this.
not starving.
I know. I'll summon the Estates
Not yet.
General, and they'll decide what to do. You really are a fat, ill-bred boy. The Estates General was the closest thing France had to a government, apart from the king. It was a purely advisory body and was rarely summoned. In fact, it hadn't been summoned for 175 years prior to this. But with France in a severe crisis, the king felt the time was right to call on the government to help. The Estates General was made up of representatives from the 3 estates, that is, the clergy, the nobility, and everybody else. Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. The first order of business is regarding the clergy and nobility. You all get
Fucking
brand
wow,
new
it's
Porsches.
dead, boys.
You get a Porsche.
Fucking
and you
sucks,
get a
dude.
Porsche. And you get a Porsche. Everybody gets a Porsche. And now into the second order of business. France is completely out of money. Like, it's never been this bad before. Anyone got any ideas? How about we all get Lamborghinis next time? The king decided that in order to make a decision, they had to come up with a voting system. Okay, the clergy. You have a population of 130,000, so you'll get 1 vote. The nobility. You have a population of 350,000, so you'll also get 1 vote. And the third estate. You have a population of 27 million people and make up 98% of the population. Very impressive. You'll get 1 vote. The third estate were obviously pretty unhappy with this system because they kept on finding that this would happen. We propose to raise taxes on the third estate. All in favor? All opposed? 2 to 1. Taxes will be raised on the third estate. We propose a motion that says the first 2 estates are a bunch of poo-poo heads. All in favor? All opposed? 2 to 1. It's
Democracy.
official. We are not poo-poo heads. The third estate realized that any attempt at reform would be outvoted by the 2 upper estates, and they thought that was kind of lame. So they decided that since they were
just
98%
chatting, yeah,
of
there's
the
no more wow
population,
here, man.
they could go off to form their own government, make their own laws, and take over the running of the country. And so, the National Assembly was born. The third estate
This
was
is very
now in
informative to me.
control,
I never-
and
I
there
don't know
was
anything
nothing
about this,
the
actually.
king could do to
This is
stop.
really helping me,
Aha!
actually,
I've
to
locked you all out of your
demarcate it.
building. What are you going to do about it? We'll probably go find a different building that isn't locked. Ow, no! The National Assembly did find another unlocked building, just down the road, an indoor tennis court. where on the 20th of June,
They played tennis already at that
they all
time?
took the tennis court oath, pledging to continue meeting
Tennis
until
was
the
already
king finally
thing?
gave in to their demands for more equality and economic reform.
I'm level
This new
58,
National
but
Assembly
World of
included
Warcraft is
many of
dead.
the most
The server's
educated
died.
members of the Third Estate, including two young lawyers by the names of Maximilien Robespierre and Georges
I heard
Danton.
very often
Some
of
members of the
Robespierre,
first two
but I don't know who
estates
that is.
even joined their cause. Some of these men formed a radical new political party called the Jacobin Club and quickly became leading
this
figures.
is the Jacobins,
While many members of the
Jacobino.
Third Estate simply wanted more equality, a growing number in this Jacobin faction would begin
2015,
calling for
40 even
something
played
even
tennis.
crazier: the removal of the king entirely.
Playing
this
fine
is
on
where
German
fear
server, but
began to
nobody
take hold.
plays on German
With
servers,
such a
man.
volatile situation developing, everyone was afraid of something. The king feared his position was under threat, and he called in the military to take position around Paris. The Third Estate heard rumor of the gathering military force, and they feared the king was planning to round them up and arrest them. Maybe he'd even execute them. It also didn't help that the king had just dismissed France's popular finance minister, who had been trying to make reforms himself. It seemed the king was done negotiating. Fear, left unchecked, often boils over into anger, and anger detonates with violence.
Leads to
the
suffering.
Angry people of Paris, after centuries
Everybody became
of
a Sith
cruel
Lord, man.
inequality, harsh oppression, even starvation, fearful of having their new movement for reform demolished so soon, decided that it was now or never to take action. Screw reform. They decided they'd do
La
one
femme de
better.
nuit
How
means
about
the girl of the night,
revolution?
right?
The people of Paris, believing the French military was preparing to attack, decided they should arm themselves. The National Assembly announced the creation of a bourgeois militia, the National Guard, and immediately, many troops from the French military defected over to the revolutionary side. In the early hours of July
Well,
14,
good decision.
1789, a large crowd stormed and raided the Hôtel des Invalides, a military hospital where they were able to secure a large number of rifles. The bad news was they weren't able to find any gunpowder for their new weapons. The good news was they knew exactly where to get some. A prison fortress and a symbol of royal tyranny towering over Paris, the Bastille. Mid-morning, the crowd gathered around the Bastille and demanded
There's
that
always
the man in
little
charge,
words that we
Governor
learn from school, like the
Delaunay,
charge of the
prison
Bastille.
and hand over the gunpowder.
The charging that thing,
Governor
right? Thank you,
Delaunay was
Rinro
like,
man. What's up?
No way. So he stalled for
Sup?
time by inviting a few members of the crowd in for negotiations. The crowd, still waiting outside, quickly became impatient, and before long, they stormed the fortress, taking on the French troops inside. Your Majesty, we've received word that the people have surrounded the Bastille. Governor Delaunay will hold them off. No need to worry. Actually, Your Majesty,
You're in Bastille at
it
the start
appears
of
the crowd
AC
is now
Unity.
headed
Okay, I never
away
played
from
that.
the Bastille. You see? What did I tell you? Clearly, Governor Delaunay has defeated them and has them on the run. No need to worry. Your Majesty,
Fucking monarchs,
isn't
man.
that Governor Delaunay's head on a pike? Well,
Oh,
clearly Governor
Oh.
Delaunay has taken on the form of a bodiless
Oh.
pike-head deity, and the people are so enamored with him, they're parading him around the city. No need to worry at all. When the National Assembly heard about the violence that had taken place, they had two options. Either one, they denounce it and try to carry on the revolution using peaceful means, or two, they say, damn, you stuck his head on a pike? That's pretty hardcore. And we love it. Incidentally, they went with option number two. Some historians believe this reaction paved the way for the utter violence and
Jeez,
bloodshed
man.
that would become the legacy of the French Revolution. This widespread acceptance of violence during the Revolution is also largely
Look at the
credited
view
to the
count
writings
going
of a
through the
certain
roof.
Jean-Paul Marat, a man of
Oh, man,
science
but
with a
I said
horrible
it, I will
skin
play
condition
WoW
that
for a
kept him
week.
confined
I
to
don't give a
bathtub.
fuck about the
He
view
began
count.
writing a radical newspaper he
Next week we're
affectionately
going back to
named The
normal,
Friend of the
okay? And you
People.
can guys
Citizens
can
of
watch
France,
my reactions
be
and shit.
very afraid. Given the chance, the king and the nobility won't hesitate to massacre us all. The solution is simple. Execute them. Kill every last one of them. Cut off 1,000 heads. And if that's not enough, cut off 1,000 more. Oh,
yeah,
hey, Mr.
yeah.
Squeaky. What
French
are you
Hitler
doing
over
down
here,
there?
man.
You're so cute. Aw, I love you too, Mr. Squeaky. Mwah. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. Kill them all. It became one of the most popular publications in Paris during the Revolution and succeeded in spreading ever-increasing fear and anger among the people. In August, leaders of the National Assembly, with help from a certain Thomas Jefferson, adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen,
Thomas Jefferson
an
was involved there.
incredible document
Okay.
that guaranteed liberty and equal rights to all men. And when I say men, I mean men. Despite its glaring shortcomings in gender
It's the
equality,
1800s,
the
man,
massively influential declaration would go on to inspire the struggle for liberty and equality across the
1700s.
planet
Okay,
for
sorry,
centuries.
fuck, don't fucking
However,
put me on a
back in
pipe,
France,
Jesus.
The vast majority of the people weren't really so concerned with enlightened ideas of equality as much as they were concerned with the fact that they were still starving. Bread was still expensive as hell and hard to come by. The people felt that one reason nothing had been done yet about the crisis was because the king simply couldn't see the problem. He lived in Versailles, a full 20 kilometers southwest of Paris, and as a result, lived in comfort, separated from his dirty, stinking subjects. On October 5th, a crowd of women, 7,000 strong, decided they'd do something unprecedented. They decided
guys talked
to
about
remove
women,
that
huh?
separation and confront the king
Goddamn.
directly. The women marched all the way to the king's palace in Versailles. Along the way, the crowd continued to grow into the tens of thousands.
Jeez.
And when they arrived, they demanded an audience with the king. What are those things outside the palace? They're poor people, your majesty. That's poor people? They say they're hungry. Hungry? Then let them eat cake. Wow. See, this is the exact BS that led to this whole mess in the first place. You're so out of touch. They're writhing around in the filth, breaking their back to barely scrape by, and they come to you demanding just the basic ability to feed
Jefferson
themselves.
was the ambassador
And you think
for
a slice
France,
of cake
okay.
will sort them out? Well, then let them eat Taco Bell Crunchwrap Supreme. Wow. They're not that desperate. Members of the crowd actually managed to break into the palace with the intention of killing the queen, who narrowly escaped through a secret passage in her bedroom. The enraged mob killed several members of the royal guard.
Clever
and raised
to
their
have
heads
a
on
secret
pikes,
escape.
which, if you haven't noticed yet, is something they were quite fond of doing. The king had no choice but to come out and talk to the crowd. He agreed to accept his new position,
That crowd must have
sharing
smelled
power
so
with
bad.
the revolutionary government, and to return to Paris with the crowd, removing the separation between king and subject. King Louis had a problem with people constantly raiding his palace, but one thing he didn't have a problem with was people raiding his computer, because he used NordVPN. If, like me, you don't like hackers stealing your data, password,
I'm gonna watch it to
night
support the
dates,
guy.
and girlfriend, then you need to check out NordVPN. With over
That was a
5,000
very, very
servers
good-
in
that was
60
pretty good, man.
countries, it allows
That
you to
was pretty
surf the
good.
net anonymously and safely with no personal
Ah,
data
it's the
loss.
symbol of
It's
the
super
mountains.
easy
It's
to
not a
use. You can take
haircut. I
trip
always
to a
thought
server
it's
in
the
Japan
fucking.
with just
Oh
a
my
click of a
god,
button.
They
man.
do
And while
it in
you're
Cracker
there,
in the
why not
case
check
on
out
YouTube.
some sweet Japanese Netflix?
Why are you sending me
Or
full
maybe
of
you wanna watch a
Yugoslavia,
certain
man?
Oversimplified
Jesus
video that for
Christ.
some reason has been blocked in your country. Well, with NordVPN, you can. NordVPN gives you access to super fast servers and much more. And if you're not happy with it, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Supporting already
Get
huge channel. We
NordVPN
just
now
watched
by
this
clicking
content
the
for
link
free.
below.
I think he deserves
You
that.
are in, Tommy.
NordVPN.com/.
I've heard that some of you are still not subscribed, man. What's this, man? After all these years of all this work, if you don't subscribe right now, I'm coming to you tonight. I know you. Some of you are into that. Subscribe. Back to the video. Fucking watching you, dude.
King Louis and his family were now in the Tuileries Palace in Paris, where for the next couple of years, he watched as the revolutionary government began to strip away his power. And
go.
fearing for his safety,
When did they
he
stop
had to
beheading
stay
these
on the
people?
good side. Hey, look who it is. It's my favorite revolutionaries. Yep, I'm your #1 fan. So we've made a few decisions. First, all of your friends in the nobility are gonna have to pay taxes the same as everyone else.
Oh!
Great idea. I love it. And as a side note, the tax money can no longer pay for all your lavish parties. Great. I hate those parties. They're so awkward. And also, we're taking away your Porsche. Oh, come on!
Oh.
I mean,
My points are
yay.
gone.
The king continually found demand after demand being made of him to prove his support for the revolution. On one occasion, a mob would invade the palace and demand he wear the revolutionary bonnet. This is the face of a man who is definitely pretending.
That's so that was him. He was actually an ugly motherfucker, man, and he doesn't look very bright. They made him wear the hat. They just go to his fucking palace and do that to him. Jeez. But he has to play it tactical. Dude, if I was him, I would just run, man. I will go to exile. You have to realize, man, dude, this is over, man. We gotta
He
fucking go.
wants to wear that bonnet. Now around here, I
They're
want to
gonna take
mention
my
that one
head.
thing King Louis had a problem with was people constantly raiding his palace. But one thing he didn't have a problem with was raiding noobs on this video's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow and Giant and Cuss Game.
I thought he's just making a joke, but it's real.
Champion. Against him, the king decided it might be a good idea to leave France.
Who would ever take a raid fucking... What?
A campaign to retake his country from abroad. Luckily for him, he was married to an Austrian. So on the night of June 20th, 1791, the king and his family disguised themselves as servants and attempted to flee to the Austrian Netherlands. The
Clever.
royal carriage made a stop in the town of Varennes.
Oh,
and
they
the
got him.
postmaster there was like, "Hey guys, what's up? Where are you off to? We are but a collection of inconspicuous servants heading for the border for no particular reason at all." Say.
They must have been so
you,
scared that
the
day,
fat
man.
one. You look kind of familiar. Aren't you the king? Nope. Let me see your passport. It says here you're King Louis the 16th. Nope. Not me.
Did that guy actually have a passport as a fucking
Take him
king?
away, boys. The king was promptly returned to Paris, but now the jig was up. His lack of support for the revolution was clear to all, and many considered him a straight-up traitor who
This guy
tried to
was not the
abandon his
brightest, huh?
people. As a result,
What a
the new
shitty way to
Constitution
leave the
of
country.
1791 completely reduced his powers to that of a simple figurehead, a constitutional monarch. However, radicals, such as those in the Jacobin Club, were outraged that the king wasn't to be removed entirely. So a month later, these radicals staged a protest on the Champ du
Should've
Mars,
maybe just
calling for
addicted,
the
man.
king's removal. The government of Paris feared an insurrection was mounted.
They saw his
and they
face
sent the
on a
military to
coin.
disperse the crowd.
He was recognized
And
because his
resulted in
face was on a
Revolutionary
coin.
National Guard firing on a crowd
Oh, that's
of
a self-fuck.
revolutionaries. It was a massacre. The incident exposed a deep division within the Brotherhood of the Revolution. On one side,
Oh, now they're even
the
fucking
moderates who wanted
themselves?
to keep the king as a figurehead. On the other, radicals who wanted to see the king deposed and heads roll. In the wake of the massacre,
Jeez.
these radicals received a wave of support. And speaking of rolling heads, one form of equality the revolution introduced was equality in execution. This meant no more torturous drawing and quartering, no more inhumane hanging. They wanted all criminals, regardless of economic status, to receive the same penalty, a quick and painless one. Luckily, a man by the name of Dr. Joseph Guillotine had an idea.
It's named
a
after
heavy
him.
blade that falls like thunder. The head flies off.
That must suck so hard, man. I once had a dream when I was younger that this happened to me. And I saw this documentary that says when you get guillotined, you're still alive for 30 seconds. Like, your head is in the basket and you're still conscious for like 30 seconds, man. That is the scariest shit on earth, man. You are beheaded and you still are 20 to 30 seconds like, oh, what the fuck?
Blood spurts, and the man is no more. The guillotine, otherwise known as the National Razor. The guillotine made its debut in
that's so scary, man.
1791 as the new
Better than to
form
be hanged?
of
Yeah,
execution.
probably.
The writings of Marat and others continued to call for the execution of anyone suspected of working
is
against
a
the
beach.
revolution. For him, this included some members of the clergy and nobility who had previously benefited
It's not
from the
fake.
cruel
Check out
system
YouTube.
of inequality that
They
existed
showed
before
that
the
when you get
revolution.
beheaded
In
quickly
many
like
parts of
this,
the
you are
countryside,
actually
local
still
lords had found
consciousness for
themselves
some
become a
seconds.
target. Sire, the peasants, they're revolting.
And then you slowly see
come on,
blurry,
that's a bit
it
harsh.
goes
Sure, they
dark,
smell a
and
bit,
then...
But I wouldn't say they're revolting.
Oh shit.
Oh yes, I see what you mean. Increasingly, these French aristocrats began fleeing France to find solitude in other parts of Europe. And once again, fear began to take hold. The privileged classes of these foreign nations didn't like what they were seeing because they feared revolutionary ideas may spread to their own lands. The National Assembly, actually now the Legislative Assembly, feared
The
that
domino
these nations
effect.
may decide to attack. Then why don't we attack them first? No, you idiots, we are definitely not ready for war yet. Did somebody say something? France declared war on Austria in April 1792 and immediately got pummeled. It also didn't help that Austria's ally, Prussia, joined in the fighting. The
How
Prussian
dumb would
Duke of
that be to
Brunswick
declare
posted
war on
a letter
others? You're in the
warning
middle of a
revolutionaries
revolution.
that if anything happened to the king, he would burn Paris to the ground. The Duke's letter proved to be a massive success in inspiring the people of Paris to do the exact opposite of what he intended. They were enraged by the threat, and on the 10th of August 1792, the tension in the city exploded, and a mob stormed the king's palace. Fighting broke out between the revolutionaries and the king's Swiss guard, with casualties in the hundreds. King Louis fled and took refuge in the chamber of the Legislative Assembly, where Robespierre and his radical Jacobins were gaining ever more power. Given the developing situation, the chamber decided to hold a vote, and in what some considered to be a second revolution, it was decided to suspend the monarchy entirely. King Louis XVI was now just plain old Louis, and he was sent to a prison cell where an eye could be kept on him. A month later, the newly established National Convention officially declared the French Republic, and society underwent a massive change. Enlightened ideas of democracy and equality were being implemented, but very quickly, these ideas seemed to become secondary to fear, paranoia, and a thirst for blood. The new republic began working to violently remove any semblance of the old royalist regime. The church became a prime target. Priests who refused to take an oath to the revolution were deported or arrested. A new state-sponsored atheistic religion named the Cult of Reason was created as a replacement for the Catholic Church.
Sounds actually cool, man. The
Dame,
Cult of
along
Reason?
with many other churches, had their
seems
religious
very modern
traditions
for that
destroyed
time.
and were converted to temples of reason. Even the Christian calendar didn't
I never
survive,
knew
as a
that.
brand new
Temples of Reason? That
revolutionary
sounds
calendar
actually so
was soon
good.
introduced. Hey honey, I'm home. Yeah, whatever, jerk. Whoa, what's wrong with you? You forgot. Forgot what? Everything. This entire year. My birthday was on the 3rd of Germinal, our anniversary was the 12th of Thermidor, and you promised that in Frimaire, we'd go on a romantic weekend trip to Venice. No, I said we'd do that in December. December hasn't been a thing for years. The government of Paris, now under the control of the radical sans-culottes, began rounding up suspected enemies of the revolution and sending them to prison in the thousands. Naturally, a large number of those arrested were members of the clergy and aristocracy. As France's foreign enemies continued to close in, panic spread. Georges Danton made impassioned calls for men to defend the Republic, and tens of thousands of troops left Paris for the front lines. However, in their absence, Paris was left to its own devices. As enemy troops arrived in Verdun, the people of Paris feared that their crowded prisons were becoming a breeding ground for counter-revolutionary conspiracy.
Yeah, no
what
shit.
would happen if the Prussians reached Paris and freed the aristocrats? Marat believed he knew what would happen. The aristocrats would enact their vengeance on the people. Fearing those they had already imprisoned, mobs descended on Paris's prisons. They broke in, and during the brutal September massacres, aristocrats, priests, and others were tried and executed on the spot. Even women and children weren't spared. With over 1,600 victims, word of the massacre spread across Europe. One British newspaper wondered,
Nice
are
fucking
these the rights
revolution,
of
mate.
man? Is this the liberty of human nature? But there was still
Ooh, London Times dabbing on these Frenchies here. Oh, goddamn, nice
one man in
revolution.
particular.
Anyway,
Austria and Prussia pledged that after they defeated France, they'd return King Louis to the throne. Well, checkmate Austria
Why
and Prussia,
didn't they do that?
because you can't return a man to the throne if he's already dead. Citizen Louis Capet was put on trial for treason. Obviously, he was found guilty, but his punishment was less certain. Many moderates wanted to simply deport him, but Robespierre insisted the revolution could only live if the king was dead. A vote was held, and by just one vote, Louis was sentenced to the
by
guillotine.
one vote?
If you don't mind,
Fuck
I'd
off,
like to say a
bullshit.
few words first. Gentlemen, I am innocent
Stop
of
the
everything
count.
of which I am accused. Wait, you're too loud. They can't hear me. Hang on, I haven't finished
Oh, you
yet.
tried to make a
Wait,
speech?
Dude.
Oof.
Uncool. In her prison cell, Marie Antoinette
Damn.
heard the guns fire, signaling her husband's death. Before long, she would meet the same fate. Back on the war front, France defied all expectations and actually managed to push the
I'm always a guy that likes to imagine what it must have felt like. Imagine being in that prison cell and you hear the cannons, the king just died, and you know, man, you're next. Ah, that must be such a fucking shit feeling. God damn.
enemy back.
You can't just
But
hope
then
you
more
never have to
countries
feel
joined
something
the
like that.
coalition against France, and it all went to pot again. What do we do?
The whole fucking of Europe is going against France, and you can't beat them while they're in a revolution? What the fuck are you doing?
Conscript the masses. The National Convention
What are you
introduced
doing?
a conscription law, with
How can
each
you not
regional
beat that?
department having to meet a certain quota of men for the army. However,
What
not
are you
everyone
doing?
was happy with this new law. You see, while Paris was definitely a hotbed for radical revolutionary fervor, some of the regions
France
outside
OP
of
have
Paris
heavy
weren't
tanks?
quite so keen on the revolution. Some were largely still conservative, still supported the church, and just didn't suffer from that much inequality before the revolution. So as the revolution turned increasingly violent and anti-Christian, many were outraged. Now, they were being conscripted to fight for the new republic they hated. That was the last straw. Counter-revolutionary uprisings erupted in a number of regions across France. Some would last for years, such as in the northwest, where a large-scale uprising was led by the Owls. Why were they called the Owls? Because their leader was named Jean Owl. Why was he called Jean Owl? Possibly because he could do a really good impression of an owl. Really? That's what we're going with? Owls? Just because this guy can do an impression of one? Hit him with it, Jean. Hoot, hoot. Yeah, okay, that's
Kaiser
pretty
Jimmy, man. There's so many Kaisers in this channel, I swear to God. Thank you, man.
good. The Chouannerie uprising lasted all the way until 1800. In the summer of 1793,
They're totally
the southern
fucked from the
city-
inside. How can the outside invaders like Russia not just take them over?
And then they asked if they'd possibly like
How's
to
that so
stay
hard?
and occupy the city. Being an important naval base, this was a heavy blow to the Republic, who sent a relatively unknown young captain by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte.
I can do an amazing owl. You want to hear me? I will be Tommy Owl in the revolution. Listen to this. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Tell me someone that can make a better owl. You don't know
To help
anyone.
stage the
It's the
siege of
truth.
the city,
Wait, Napoleon?
Toulon was recaptured by France in the winter, and for his service, Napoleon was
was
promoted
good.
to the rank of brigadier general. The most infamous counter-revolution, however, occurred in the Vendée region.
Oh, so Napoleon was a counter-revolutionary in the South. I don't actually know much about Napoleon. I know you guys are all super total well educated and shit. I don't know much about Napoleon. This is where he made his first name? He wasn't? So wait, what did he just say?
Captured by France in the winter, and for his service, Napoleon was promoted to the rank of brigadier general. The most infamous counter-revolution, however, occurred in the Vendée region. Throughout 1793,
for the revolution, and he pushed back the
forces
Brits.
Clashed with the region's Catholic and royal army. The Republic defeated the counter-revolution through cruel pacification. In particular, General Jean-Baptiste Carrier committed brutal atrocities. In one instance,
they're fucking their own people,
thousands
bro.
of civilians, priests, women, and children tied to ships, which were then sunk. Carrier would later be found guilty.
You know, I'm going to say something super edgy here, but it's just interesting historically how the whole world nowadays talks about Germany and their war crimes, which is totally right. Totally. But most nations on this planet did shit like this. But Germany is the most recent. Actually, that's not true. Mao was the most recent, wasn't he? And everybody always shits on us. Everybody was a bitch once.
Back in Paris, the government was still dominated by moderates. With the war going badly,
it's like the winners write history, bro. When Mao killed 60 million, no one cares. We don't talk shit about China.
Radicals' fear for the safety of the revolution intensified, and Marat even began calling for the moderates in the government to be executed. In return, the moderates called for the arrest of Marat. This led to a chain of events with the two sides in heated conflict. Robespierre declared
can't talk shit about Mao now that China owns the world. That's the thing, huh?
And called on the people to arm themselves. It all ended on the 31st of May 1793, with the National Convention surrounded by radical sans-culottes and 29 moderate Girondin politicians arrested. From this moment on, the moderates ceased to be a political force. Robespierre and his radicals would be in almost total control of the government. And this brings us to the story of a woman named Charlotte Corday. Charlotte lived in the northwest city of Caen, and like many in the area, was horrified at the rapid radicalization and increasing violence of the revolution. And the man she blamed more than anyone was Jean-Paul Marat. She wanted to bring peace back to France, and so she did something drastic. She traveled to Paris and told Marat she had a list of enemies for him to publish in his paper. Marat eagerly invited her in for a meeting. So where's that list of enemies you promised me? Here it is. Wait a minute. This isn't a list of enemies. It just says, yippee-ki-yay, mother...
Holy shit, she did that? Oh, there's a picture about... Wow. That woman was so mad. Dude, you don't fuck with mad women. She was so mad she traveled to Paris playing this fucker and killing him. And he was literally always in a bathtub, that fucker.
Marat was no more. Charlotte was quickly arrested and sent to the guillotine. Her dream of restoring peace, however, died with her. Marat became a martyr. In temples of reason, symbols of the dead Marat became the new crucifix. In death, he became an even more powerful inspiration for the extreme levels of violence that were about to rip.
He had a condition, that's why he was always in the bathtub.
That's right. Here comes the Reign of Terror. If you thought this revolution already sounds pretty violent, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, son. The radicals were now in control, and they believed not only was France surrounded by foreign enemies, but that within the masses, there were also plenty of internal ones too. Individuals not loyal to the revolution, conspiring to bring about its downfall. Robespierre and the rest of the radical faction were having none of it. A new committee of public safety was established with 12 members.
This sounds almost fascist in a way.
Protect the new French Republic from its enemies, and
I still can't believe that the foreigners, the foreign countries just don't invade France. How can it be so hard?
The tribunal was also reinstated. A special court created to streamline the process of trying suspected enemies and handing out their death sentences. With these two new institutions, Robespierre wanted to scare France's enemies straight. In September 1793, it was
that guy was pretty fucking wild, man.
The order of the day. In other words, fear had become official government policy. And from then onwards, we enter into the period known as the Reign of Terror. Spies and secret police were everywhere and watched the people closely. France's public had to be extremely careful what they said and how they behaved. Obviously, criticizing this new system, or the government, would quickly have you sent off to the guillotine. But that's not all. Even the most minor offense could have you tried before the Revolutionary Tribunal. Hello, Citizen Martin. Hello, Monsieur Dubois. Monsieur? Did I just hear you say Monsieur? That's the old style of address, my friend. To the guillotine! You know what? I didn't like him, but I do feel kind of bad for the king and his family. Oof, expressing sympathy for the royal family, are we?
Ooh, you gone?
To the guillotine! 12 sous for a loaf of bread?
They were the most populous country in the world, though.
To the guillotine!
Still, man, the whole fucking Europe
taking forever.
attacks you and they just are fine while in the revolution? That's crazy.
Anti-revolutionary thoughts.
Trash Prussians,
To the
man.
guillotine. Max, we're sending way too many people to the guillotine. To the guillotine! Chop, 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 chop. It was insane. All across France, about 40,000 people were killed for suspected crimes against liberty. Let's say your neighbor won't stop mowing the lawn at 7 in the morning. Well, then all you gotta do is tell the government they've been talking smack about the revolution. And
that is the scariest shit ever, man. If you don't get a fair trial.
Maybe they'll even be executed, taking a metaphorical load off your shoulders and a literal one off theirs. The most prominent victim of the Reign of Terror was a certain Marie Antoinette, who was finally tried and found guilty of treason in 1793. She expected she'd be brought to the guillotine in a royal carriage, fit for a queen. All the Republic could provide for her, however, was a wooden tumbril. At 37 years old, the most hated woman in French history met her end on the 16th
there has to be a picture about that.
1793.
What's her name? Marie Antoinette. Oh, this was her. Dude, why did they all look like incestuous, man? They all look so weird, but they had different ideals back then. There's a movie about that? That's Kirsten Dunst. What is that movie? Uh-huh. Did no one ever make a picture of her in that carriage? That sounds like something they will do. Because like her getting carried in that cart, that sounds like something an artist will paint.
Robespierre had saved
she was
the
a Habsburg.
through terror. Internal dissent was being suppressed. The food situation was no longer quite as bad. Even the French military had got its act together again and pummeled the Allies at the Battle of Fleurus. For Danton and his
dude, fuck! This is like Hitler Germany. Fucking, this is Hitler Germany in France. No one beats them. They are fucking killing everybody. They're crazy.
Hey Robespierre.
Jeez.
So we were thinking that since things are finally going better, maybe we should rein in the terror. And while we're on it, we could possibly start taking it easier on the church, and also try to end this costly war.
To the guillotine.
Oh, crap.
Oh, jeez.
As time went on, Robespierre seemed to go, for lack of a better term, a bit mental. He was hell-bent on creating what he called a republic of virtue, and for him, this meant amping up the bloodshed.
That's literally fucking mental, man. That's like
in summer of 1794,
like in a movie,
executions
man.
reached an unprecedented level during a period known as the Great Terror. Even those closest to him found their way to the guillotine if they dared oppose his ideas and actions, and he began alienating himself from the rest of the convention. He created a new deistic religion called the Cult of the Supreme Being, along with the new annual Festival of the Supreme Being. Man, I think Robespierre is really starting to lose.
He made his own fucking religion. I want to see that guy. Sorry. A Robespierre. What a fucking cunt. That guy sucks. Ay, that's an evil dude, man. Fucking hell. Jeez. And actually, that guy literally looks like the guy in the fucking... That guy, I don't know what it is. But he looks like the guy in the picture. What the fuck is wrong with your face? Weakness. Guillotined after accusations of an... Oh my god, man.
Something. Nonsense. Sure, he's gone a little extreme, but he doesn't think he's a god. My children, bathe your immortal souls in the virtue of my republic. Okay, yeah, he's completely
They
lost.
always go too far, man.
Ultimate mistake,
These leaders.
However, came on July 26th, when he made a speech to the National Convention, in which he said this: I have in my hand a brand new list of enemies to be sent to the guillotine, and many of you are on this list, but I'm not going to tell you who yet. What do you think of that? I think we should send Robespierre to the guillotine first.
Yeah.
All in favor?
In the end, he got guillotined himself.
2 days later, Robespierre became the
what a
victim
fuck,
of
dude.
the monstrous terror and paranoia he had created. Many historical accounts of the revolution end here with the death of Robespierre and his terror. But the revolution officially continued for another 5 years until 1799. So what happened between now and then? Well, after the fall of Robespierre, a more moderate political group called the Thermidorians took control of the convention. They wanted to restore stability to the government. Now, Robespierre's allies and other radicals who had fueled the terror themselves became the target of political suppression. Bourgeois street fighters took on the radical sans-culottes in the streets during a period named the White Terror. In 1795, the Thermidorians drafted a new constitution.
The White
created
Terror?
a government called the Directory, with the purpose of preventing power from being able to fall into the hands of a single individual again. As this new government was being established, royalists who wanted to bring the monarchy back to France saw this moment as an opportunity to strike. They staged an insurrection in Paris and battled with the National Guard in the streets.
How is anyone
Luckily,
still alive in this
Napoleon
country,
Bonaparte
man?
happened to be in Paris at the time, and he took control of the situation, firing on the crowd and putting down the insurrection.
Oh, he is
From
clever.
this moment
Clever.
the people of Paris would never again be able to stage a popular uprising and lost their control over the revolution. For his actions, Napoleon became a general and was sent to take control of the French armies in Italy. The new Directory remained a fairly ineffective government for the remainder of the revolution. It was plagued with corruption and struggled to keep the economy afloat, and as a result, wasn't very popular.
Pretty much everyone who takes over the country is just a fucking idiot.
Both royalist France
thinking about himself.
Aragon, they didn't really know what to do with themselves. Men no longer removed their hats when talking to women. Different classes began intermingling, and a publication began circulating that looked a lot like a modern dating app. It was social anarchy. Outside of France, the war continued. In 1795, France took the Netherlands, where they set up a puppet state. Then they negotiated both Prussia and Spain out of the war.
How strong is France? They're just beating everyone!
To reinforce rebellion, but that plan failed.
Holy shit, the rest of Europe is so fucking bad!
Three-pronged attack with the aim of marching on Vienna and knocking Austria out of the war.
Jeez!
The two northern armies were defeated.
How can no one stop them?
However, Napoleon in the south, with groundbreaking military strategy, won
it's their EU4 ideas?
After battle.
20% admiral, 5% discipline, 20% manpower.
Began closing in on Vienna.
Jeez.
The Austrians freaked out, and Napoleon oversaw the signing of a peace
Holy
treaty.
crap,
He had almost
Napoleon was a fucking mad lad.
Austria out of the war. And by the way, he was only 28. So maybe it's about time you moved out of your mom's basement. Napoleon became a famed hero among the French people, but his aspirations were still
Nonsense, he got you good, man. He got you good.
And discovered a bunch of
Are we in sub mode? Turn off sub. Wait, are we in sub mode? What the fuck? Get them out of the basement. Thank you, Chrissy boy. Thank you, my bro.
Egyptian stuff. But then the British destroyed his fleet and trapped his forces. Say, Napoleon, sir, you're not going to leave us here stuck in Egypt and return to France, are you? Nonsense, my boy.
Right.
I would never dream of abandoning my loyal soldiers. Wow, what's that over there?
Oh, he abandoned the soldiers?
On his return to Paris, Napoleon found himself to be extremely popular, and the government extremely unpopular, and he started getting some power-hungry ideas. Conveniently, a politician...
That's the entire history of the human race. Is always a guy being hungry for power and trying to get to the top.
Named Emmanuel Joseph
and they all
Sieyès
fell.
Approached Napoleon and said, "Hey man, since you're so popular, do you want to help me stage a coup?" "Great idea. Let's stage a coup, and then I'll coup you." What? Napoleon, with the help of his politician brother, entered the government chamber, possibly got punched in the face, and finally his troops intimidated the council to dissolve the government and create a new constitution that basically made Napoleon a dictator. So there you have it. The French Revolution, born with the great promise of liberty and equality.
What a fucking shit show that was! Oh my god!
System that had existed for
complete and utter shit show.
Sidelined by terror, equality
God damn!
Didn't quite hit the mark, and an absolute monarchy replaced by an absolute dictator. Napoleon began stabilizing French society.
This is like Germany's history with Hitler and shit.
That crazy calendar,
like I feel most countries in the world had a history like this, where some fucking maniac took over.
He slept soundly at night dreaming
Thank you, Cowgo
bigger. Napoleon's expansionist aspirations, combined with the ongoing conflict in Europe, would eventually lead the continent into a huge conflict known today as...
To be honest, I know nothing about this. I would be very, very excited to... But he didn't make a video about that yet, right? I gotta be honest, I don't know much about the Napoleonic stuff. Thank you, Sneaky Triangle. I literally live 2 minutes away from the place where the Völkerschlacht happened. The huge final battle or some shit. It's like a huge thing in my city. Like there's a graveyard literally 5 minutes away, and there's a little hill, and it's called the Napoleon Hill. Because this is supposedly where Napoleon stood and watched the battle or some shit. I don't know, man. When you talk to people that saw this war, you see how much pain is in their eyes and how unnecessary this all was. As I said before, all these wars are always by crazy leaders, man. It's just the leaders.
She slipped through my fingers like sand. Further she got a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Oh well, ship sail. She slipped through my fingers like sand. Further she got a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad.